for joining for the Leadership Speak series. We have today we have Ashok Shastry, co-founder for DriveU, and we have Professor Srinivasan from IIM Bangalore, who will be moderating the session. So before I, say anything, I'll just directly hand it off to Ashok and Professor Srinivas to take it from here. Thank you so much for attending, and I hope you enjoy this. Right, over to you guys.
Thank you, Ashish. It's been a pleasure to host this talk. I don't know if this talk is part of a series or not, but it's wonderful to have Ashok with us. Ashok, thank you for joining this event, and we have an entire bunch of our MBA students. At least I can see a few of them on the Zoom link, and I think enough of them on the YouTube stream. So the audience is much more broader than our MBA students, both full-time and part-time MBA students. So we will keep that as broad as possible. So we will start with understanding your career journey. Typically, when we think of transportation and platforms on transportation, the common thing that comes to our mind is, so there are things that have become a verb in itself, a noun in itself, like a Uber. And we use Uberization for a lot of things. And here is a aggregator in the city transportation business, which is not Uber, right? So tell me about your journey, how you, from your college to coming back to India to be able to find this opportunity of aggregating something other than Uber.
Sure. So in 2013, I had actually finished off an internship in the US, and I was looking out for something to do. And by chance, I was able to work with or get into Taxi for Sure. Ram, one of our co-founders, he was an early investor there. So we spoke to them, and this is the very early days of Taxi for Sure. A small office, 20, 30 people at max. And I joined the team then. So flew out to India, thought I was going to spend about 6 months, but here I am. Internship in the US. And so when I joined Taxi for Sure, I was part of their operations analyst team, and then joined Operamea's marketing team, handling some pan-India events for them. And around that time, around 2015, in the beginning, there was an acquisition offer for Ola, from Ola. And this at the time was one of the largest acquisition deals in India's startup ecosystem. And at that point, we were not sure what to do. And eventually the deal went through, and I was left also, what do I do next? Should I go back to the US, do an MBA there? Should I do an MBA here? Should I work at a startup in the US or here? So I started doing a lot of research on different startups, early stage ones, pre-Series A, maybe Series A, where I had fit in with my knowledge and what I had done at Taxi for Sure. At that time, then I stumbled upon a company in the US that had less than 1,000 app downloads, and they raised $12 million. Now, this company was a parking on-demand valet, actually. So you would call them and they'd send a valet anywhere in the city. They'd pick your car up and bring it back to you anywhere you want. Did a lot of on-ground research. I thought this was okay, cool, fantastic idea. We're going to be able to, emulate this over here in India in the context. And then what I quickly found out was that we actually had assembled the team at that point to build this, and we started building a platform. And about 2 to 3 weeks into building this driver service platform, or this on-demand valet platform, we realized that parking is not really an issue. You can go to a Starbucks here, there's a valet, there's clothing stores with valets, anywhere you go, because parking is actually a problem, there is a valet. But it's already being solved. So is this something that we can scale up that's going to have a purpose beyond a vanity company? We looked at, we went to the whiteboard, and we ended up, drawing out like the consumer journey. So they're at their house, then they go to the location, and then the car needs to be parked. So A to B prime. We actually realized that going from point A to point B is a much more difficult task with the infrastructure lagging behind the growth of the vehicles on the road, as well as the troublesome traffic that you face, the crazy drivers. So we started doing a little bit of research. started going to Just Dial, just searching on Google. Are there driver services like this available? And we saw a ton. There's a ton of mom and pop shop driver services, and we're like, oh, nobody's doing this yet. Nobody has taken, this traditionally offline business and put technology as its backbone to run the show. No, they didn't. These mom and pop shops, we realized have only maybe 20, 30 drivers that they're working with in a locale. Whether it be a JP Nugger or in Burley. So it's just 20, 30 people is all that these call centers can manage, or maybe 1 or 2 people could manage. And we said, look, this is an opportunity. So at that point, the team right at that time was moonlighted. So they were still a part of Taxi for sure, but I would get them, the engineers, in the evening. I would just sit around my house, not this one, in a small living room, and no inverter or anything, by candlelight. And that night we said, guys, look at this. There's hundreds of these mom and pop shops, and the problem that we're solving for parking isn't really that real. And luckily, because of the booking systems and the backend work that had been done could be easily used for this driver service, we switched the same day. Now, when we made that change, we started doing even more research. Okay, how are these? What are the problems that we're going to solve? Are we just going to aggregate these different operators? And we had 2 options: aggregate these operators, or create your own, be your own operator, create your own pool of drivers. It didn't take us very long to realize that the only way to go about it was to create your own dedicated pool of drivers, because at that, the problems we set out to solve were pricing. You could call up any of these places and you'll get 4 or 5 different pricings. You can even call the same one and they'll give you 2 different pricings depending on who you're talking to. Then we realized, okay, who are these drivers coming to drive you? That's how the name kind of came about, by the way. So who are they coming? Who's coming? You don't know. There's no background verification checks going on. There's no training being done. They don't really ask you, okay, can this guy drive a automatic Honda City, or can you do hatchbacks only? If you have a luxury car, it becomes a big issue. Considering that this is a car is typically a person's second most valuable asset, this was something that we saw as a problem we wanted to solve. Another problem we wanted to solve was not just the transparency of pricing, but the pricing itself. The pricing at the time was you had to book a 4-hour package, 8-hour package, and so on and so forth. We said, hey, let's break that model. Let's do something a little bit more unique. And we started we said, we're going to provide you a driver, 99 rupees an hour, flat, 1.65 or equal pay per minute after that. We wanted to bring in the entire normalization of the processes, as well as the basically uniformity of service provided. I consider like maybe a McDonald's model, where this driver, he's coming in uniform. At that time, he has a hat, comes with a backpack, all supplied, and he follows the same process every single time. So those are basically the 3 or 4 main issues we wanted to solve. And from day one, we got great results. So that was kind of the journey on how DriveU actually came to be. We saw this untapped opportunity in the market that was already existing for years and years, but they lacked many different traits that people were looking for: pricing, quality, and safety. And this is where we are. This is how we started off.
Where did you get your first drivers from? Where were your first drivers coming from?
Okay, that's a great question. So because of the Taxi for Sure background, we were able to actually, I hired a few of the ops people from Taxi for Sure as well. So they were able to call around and talk to these previous cab drivers. And we built out our first network of maybe 15 drivers that the training happened in my living room. At this point, we didn't have an office space yet. We weren't funded or anything. So we were just, being bullish. Okay, once we get the ops down, we're going to do this. So the first driver base came from the Taxi for Sure operators.
And where were your first customers coming from, the riders?
Oh, that's a equally good question. We used the traditional channels, Just Dial. We did some small Facebook ads. We did some flyers and pamphlets on the newspapers or door to door. So this very traditional marketing that we were doing.
Okay, so you started with one small geography, or you started the entire city?
Entire city.
Okay,
Yeah,
and were your drivers open to driving from all the way from, say, Whitefield to Koramangala to drive a rider?
that was a challenge. We realized quickly that we're going to have to pay massive incentives to them to actually get them to move far away because we didn't have the density of drivers yet. And if I were to say one of the biggest learnings I had would be to start off small, start off, do a great service in a smaller area, and then scale up. So,
okay. So this did you have density of riders? Was there any particular point of time or a particular geography from where the riders would originate from? I would imagine that, like they say, cab aggregators would have a morning peak, people going to work, or evening peak when they're getting back from work. I would imagine that DriveU would start from, say, late evenings, so people have gone, had a little more than what they would want, what I would like to have a liquor, and they're not confident enough to drive home and not get caught. And that's possibly, those are kinds of things. Did you look at those kind of opportunities?
Yeah, we actually, so the first question, we had our drivers actually sitting in our office. At that, maybe after a month or two of launching, we got an office space, and our drivers would actually report there every day. We put them on a minimum guarantee plan and had them actually in shifts. So we, back to the question about the, how did you do this with the drinking and driving cases? That was a new use case. We didn't learn about these use cases until we actually went out there. And this is something that is a great entry point for any user. I think plenty of people in Bangalore have used us for that in particular.
Okay. So that's possibly one of the places where you go with the car and you can't come back with the car.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same with office, and actually.
How did the drivers figure out about parking? Because that was your original problem that you started with. Yeah. Here is parking was an issue, and here is the owner with the car using the DriveU to reach a particular point, and then he is walking off like he would walk off a cab, and he would expect the driver to be available when he's finished his whatever shopping, and when she walks out of the mall, she wants the driver to pick them up. And the driver's job is to figure out parking and all that stuff.
Yeah, the driver figures out parking. Maybe if it's at a mall, then he'll go into the parking lot there. If he's going out to like say a commercial street, he'll go roam around, find a place and sit, and then as soon as he gets a call, he'll come back to the original location or wherever a customer wants him to pick it up.
So the drivers how did you train the drivers? What was your driver training?
So we created an entire module, from everything that starts off from customer service, what happens when you encounter a customer that's kind of rude. It goes into all those details. How should you interact with the customers, open the doors, carry the bags, all these types of things. Then technology training back then was actually something that we had to really take up. Remember, this is 2015, and the smartphone, not everybody has smartphones. We actually, initial stages, we would purchase smartphones, many of them, and then we distributed them to drivers as part of the kit because the penetration was pretty low in the blue-collar worker space. So it included technology training as well on how to use our app. At that point, our app was very simple. It was just accept booking, location, go, essentially. But as things went on, we realized it's not just about our apps, how do you use that, but how do you use Google Maps? And many people, back then were not familiar how to use Google Maps. So technology was a big part of our training when we first started off.
What are the motivations for the drivers? I imagine a driver, somebody who knows how to drive and comes to the city to become a driver, would typically find a small job, typically become a valet, for instance, in a large establishment, drive for half a kilometer, 1 kilometer to park, or 200 meters in park and take it out, and then slowly want to become a DriveU driver. But once the driver starts making enough money, has realized that he can drive a variety of cars, it's always a human Indian tendency to be able to invest in an asset. And you settle down. You settle down by buying a car and you own an asset. So these driver partners were good enough, and they were able to possibly make enough money to put out a down payment to buy their own car. And that's possibly in their own minds a progression in life, that I started driving somebody else's cars, and now I'm driving my own car, and possibly drive you to other platforms like the Ubers or the other cab aggregators. How did you manage this motivation of the drivers?
Well, DriveU has always had it. From the day one, we believed in the 3 R's: respect, response, and revenue. So if you can give a driver respect, he'll respect you back. If you can give him responses, if he has any issues, he's going to be more inclined to stick with you. And obviously, the last one, revenue, is the highest one. And when you touch on this revenue point, we are going into what you're asking. In the early days, when Ola and Uber were giving these crazy incentives, they'd even help you purchase the car. They're just trying to get as many cabs on the road as possible. This was an issue. Our drivers, they'd come, they'd work with us 3 months, 4 months, they'd earn well with us. And then they saved up enough money to put a down payment on the car and join a platform. Now we see the reverse of that. But that was an issue that we had to overcome. We would just, stick with those 3 R's. We'd make sure our drivers are earning well. We'd follow up with them on any issues or cases they had. And we still have early drivers who are still with us after 6 or 7 years of operations. So, a lot of drivers too, they like our platform because we give them flexibility. The split of drivers on full-time, part-time with us, we have 30% full-time drivers, meaning that we're the only income source for them and their families. The other 70% of drivers, this is interesting, they do other work. They might be a school bus driver, they might work as a plumber, electrician. We have college students that are with us on the platform. So DriveU gives many people a very flexible earning source. So we don't call them up and say you have to work 8 hours, 12 hours a day to make any incentives. You complete this number of trips. We make it kind of easy for them to come in the system, even if you're not a full-time guy, to make good earnings. So this is why many of our drivers, even today, stick with us, and we have good retention of our drivers, is because we're able to provide them additional earnings aside from their normal jobs.
But this is very interesting. 70% of your drivers are part-time drivers. And it's very interesting to see that the college students and those kinds of things who are not necessarily doing this as a source of earning, but as a top up to their whatever additional source of earning. And going back to your 3 R's, I think the first R matters a lot to be able to hold on to these part-time drivers, the respect. Give me some stories about how somebody who is not necessarily not so desperate to drive, but is driving to make whatever additional money or to pay off his fees or whatever, and is treated with respect.
Yeah, so we really it comes top down for us at DriveU. I respond to drivers, I talk to drivers. If they message me, I always tell the team, hey guys, this is issue we have to solve for him. So I think at a top down level, this is something that we look at. When a guy, he says, we call them up, we see that he's worked yesterday, he's not coming in today. So we call him and say, hey, can you take this booking? It's nearby. We'll never say, you have to take this booking or we'll suspend you. So this is something that we've instilled on our team throughout. Today, that's how, I think that's why we have a great reputation in the driver community.
So is there a segmentation of drivers? Do you know that there are these are kinds of drivers who are night owls, who would do the day work and they would take the nights? Do you have that kind of a segmentation of your drivers?
Yes, we do. So many of these part-time drivers, what they do is they work Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and they come in from 9 p.m. until say 3 a.m. During that time, that driver can do 3 to 4 trips. Every trip he's earning about 400 rupees. So each day he's earning 1,600 bucks. 3,200 or even 4,800 per weekend he's earning as a part-time driver. And this is great supplemental income for him. About 20,000 per month as a part-time guy.
That's a lot.
Then we have the day guys, they want to do 8-hour bookings as well. They want to stick with one car all day. They don't want to go back and forth and try to find other things. We also have the guys who come in the mornings, they do one trip before their other job. And then in the evening when they finish, they do another trip with us. So we have all sorts of different types of drivers and different segmentations of them.
Okay. Tell me more about the typical driver profile. Are they 30, 40? Are they 20s? Are they 50s?
Yeah,
What kind
okay.
of driver age profiles do you have?
So to be in our system, you have to have at least 3 years of experience of driving. And we do look at, what level they do come into. What we normally see, we have our average age around 35 years old. Right? That's our average age. So we have a good amount of, younger guys coming in, maybe they're 8th standard, 10th standard pass, and they need to find a job in the city. Then we have these older guys who are a little bit more established. They know that this is what their life, they prefer to be drivers. They're fine with this occupation, and they see driving as a platform to stick with us. Those older guys are generally our full-time guys. So these younger guys will stick with the part-time gigs.
Okay. So now let's get to business issues around this. What about insurance? Insurance is always a major issue in India. Scratches, little bumping here and there, little road rage. How do owners or how do riders manage drivers' behavior on these?
Yeah, so in the initial days, up until about 2017, this was something that we would cover ourselves. A customer comes and says, "Hey, your driver scratched the car a bit on the side." We're like, "Okay," it was 5,000, 6,000 the damage we cover, which was at that time working out. Now, as InsurTech started booming in 2016, 2017. We started a partnership with ACO, where customers can opt in for trip insurance. If you opt in for 10 rupees, you get up to 10,000 coverage, and it's really simplified things, paperless process throughout the entire journey for the customer. So this is how we deal with it now. Luckily, for us, we rarely have any major cases other than a scratch. And what we found out also about these scratches, it doesn't usually happen on the road, guys. It happens in the parking garages.
Exactly.
Parking garages, the pillars, it's very narrow. There's not really much of a standardization. So how we kind of curbed it without without ACO in the picture. And what we still recommend to the drivers today is don't park the car if you don't feel comfortable. The customers parked the car 100 times before this. Ask them to park it. It's not too much. And you can explain to them, I don't feel comfortable. And that works out quite well for us too.
Wonderful. And what about road rage? You would imagine that there is also a language thing that happens in a metropolitan city like Bangalore, where the owner, the rider may not necessarily speak the local language, but the driver does possibly speak the local language. And there is road rage that happens.
No, that doesn't. Thankfully, our drivers have all been, very good. We have that language issue, but even me, somebody who doesn't speak Kannada, and my Hindi is as good as a 3-year-old's, I get by, talking to our drivers, and we're pretty thankful for having a solid set. In road rage, this is their occupation, so I think everybody who drives here, sometimes you get cut off, or somebody comes very close or scratches your car. You're like a little mad, but you're not going to get out the car and start yelling at them.
What's the training before you onboard the driver? So supposing somebody else comes and starts yelling at you, well, what do you do? Is that part of your training?
It is in some sense. Just avoid conflict of any kind. Sometimes our customer will instigate the driver to actually go out and yell at that person. And very few cases happen like that. But generally, we tell the drivers, hey, don't get in fights with anybody. Take pictures, document it. We'll be there to support you. So again, it goes to the response. We will always support our drivers in these cases, so they know that they can reach out to our team anytime.
Okay, great. So let's transition from drivers to riders, and it's a very important part. I would imagine a lot of your riders are a variety of genders. You would possibly have all women customers. You would possibly have, from my own personal experience, spouses who can't drive and they still have a car and they want a driver. So is there a need? Have you ever felt a need for a lot of women drivers? How is that panning out in India?
We've had that request, and it's something that we're always looking into. But we always want to make sure that, even our women riders, there has to be a safety drivers. There has to be a safety check for them. Having that, check that the rider is actually a woman looking for a woman driver is something that we're concerned about, which is why we don't bring it into the system. So right now, I think a lot of our female riders, which is a good handful. I know you could say 50-50. They're totally fine with having a male driver. And I think sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean our drivers are very respectful as well. We haven't had any cases. We've served over 2.5 million trips where a customer says your driver has misbehaved with me. So we're very proud of that, and I think coming from say a driver who is driving a cab versus a driver who is driving a private vehicle, it's a little bit one up on there and the level of aspirations as well as prestige. So we do screen them. I saw a question in the chat that came before. We do a full background verification. Then we do a course records check, a DL extract, and a police records check on top of that. So we do make sure that, as our drivers know that we're looking for safety, and our customers are also. That's one of the reasons they use us, because they trust us that we're hiring the right people into the system.
And what about minors, unaccompanied minors in the car? Supposing I want to send my 10-year-old to a chess class and come back. So do riders use DriveU to take a minor to a tuition class and bring them back? And what are your protocols on that?
I've heard of that. I've heard of that happening. Where a parent was too busy, they have to send a kid, a couple kilometers away, come back, pick me up, we'll go shopping, and then pick up this kid from tuition. That does happen. It's something that we're looking at to explore to provide this service as a product. But due to the pandemic and stuff, a lot of those things got derailed. But it does happen unnaturally or organically on its own.
But would you have different kinds of things about your about just driving minors around?
No, we don't. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about riders now. How do you keep the rider loyal? The riders typically have a car, and when they decide to invest in a car, either they know that I'm going to drive myself, or I'm going to invest in a driver again. If I could put a fixed asset at 10 lakh rupees buying a car, I could surely spend 20,000 rupees a month, a recurring expense on a driver. So they would typically have a driver, or at least an access to a driver, when they decided to buy a car. And then here is DriveU, which is providing me a driver for a day, a driver for an hour, a driver for a trip. So how are these loyal? I would possibly get the first consumer, get the first rider when my traditional driver is on leave. My traditional driver has gone home. I have a 3-day break, and therefore I would possibly get DriveU. But how do I keep these people loyal?
Good question. So we cater to people who don't want full-time drivers. I think traditionally, what we've seen in the past is that your parents might want a full-time driver, because that full-time driver is not only going to be a driver. He's going to wash your car. He's going to get groceries, get your laundry. He'll do many other different tasks along the way. But all that also comes with the management problem. One feedback that we constantly get on why users use DriveU instead of a full-time driver is the example, hey, I need to go to work in the morning, and then I get a driver. He comes with, if I have a full-time driver, he takes me to the office, and he sits there for 8 hours a day until I come back home. And a lot of people don't want to deal with it, don't want to manage a driver, beyond, say, paying him for 4 hours. And a lot of people don't need a full-time driver. For me, I think a lot of users, I drive myself, quite a bit. And a lot of times, if I'm going a long distance, say in Bengal from Coromandel to Geelong to Newtown is 2.5 hours, and coming back is also a pain too. So that's when I would use a driver. So not necessarily full time I want a driver, but having a driver available to me whenever I want is, I think, a new age trend that we are catering to, the on-demand service provider.
Mm-hmm. And how about this need for a substitute driver. Is that still a big this one, that I have a regular driver but I'm looking for a substitute driver? Is that a need, or is that just not there at all?
No, it's there. It's there quite a bit. Yeah. So I mean, your driver goes on leave for a month to back to his hometown, or he's sick, can't come in. So a lot of people do use us as a substitute driver because of the quality that we get.
And for these people who use it as a substitute, do they come back to drive you and stay loyal? What proportion?
I'd say that they're pretty familiar with drive you, so they'll keep on using us as and when they need. So our recurring user base are the users who would rather us manage the driver. They would like a driver only 3-4 times per week rather than every day.
Okay. And how much is a loyalty? Do you track, measure loyalty?
Yes. So I saw a question that just came up about what is the percentage of users that come back to drive you. We have a reasonably good retention rate. Month on month, say month 1, 100% of users are there. Month 2 will go down to around 27%. But one thing that what happens is that 90% of users keep our app on their phone. So we become more of a utility for the other users. And this 27% will just slowly trail down a bit. But quarter on quarter, if you look at the metrics, users use us as they want, as they please. It's not like you're going to use a driver every time that you go out to drink. So they'll use us in those situations, one-off situations. So we're more of a flexible platform like that. And that is kind of why we're going into the super app route as well, to provide more services to build up frequency.
Okay. Do users also use DriveView without the customer in the car? Like for instance, I just take my car, go to the laundry, pick up the dry clean stuff.
All the time. All the time?
Without the passenger?
So users will use us too if they have to send their car for servicing, or they pick up somebody from the airport, or to get dropped at the airport, they'll send the car back to their house alone. So that happens all the time.
Okay.
Those are the common ones.
Okay. How do you manage these one-way trips? I see a lot of your drivers have their own two-wheelers. They would come and park into the consumer's home, pick up the consumer's house, the rider's vehicle. And if I get dropped one way, the rider is struggling to get back home, get back to his two-wheeler.
Yeah, so this is a question that Guru Rajendra had asked as well.
Okay.
He hears stories about how drivers are struggling to get back to the hub or residence late at night or in remote locations. And this is something that generally has been solved on their own up until the more recent 6 or 7 months. I'd say where before there was a huge presence of balanced vehicles available. They had Rapido, which was very cheap, Uber, which was very cheap. We solved this, Guru, through providing them adequate funds to come back on a night trip. We are actually building out a more, variable system where we identify dark zones of transportation. We also look at times a day where they're going. If he's going to be dropped in Koramangala, then we can safely say that he'll get another booking immediately without trouble. But this is a feedback that we've been recently seeing. And it's primarily due to when we launched, and as the early days of the tech boom was happening, transportation was cheap. I could go from Koramangala to, this is an example if you're from Bangalore, understand, Koramangala to Indiranagar is about 6 or 7 kilometers, and that cost me like $75 only. And at that time, drivers were also using the same, discounted systems, discounted, prices, and now it'll cost me about $160, $170 to go to Indiranagar. So we're reworking that whole pricing model for our drivers to keep them happy. And we will look at more variable pricing in dark zones or hard to access places.
Okay. So I also see a lot of questions on this one. Before I get to the questions, how do we train the drivers to be able to handle the variety of vehicles that your consumers will have? You will have automatic transmission. You will soon have electric vehicles, more and more electric vehicles. You would have issues around knowing how to use a sunroof, maybe, longer than normal SUVs. So how do we train the drivers to do these multiple vehicles? Or do we have, you specialize in automatic, you specialize in hatchbacks?
So another great question. This is something that, from day one has been what we learned in the initial stages, that we have to classify our drivers based on car type, gear type. And we at this point, we have not implemented any, say, test drive vehicles of our own. That's coming, and I'll get to the reason why. Our drivers are 80% of our trips are hatchbacks and sedan vehicles. So you can really generalize, can this guy drive the car? He will. But once you get to the larger XUVs and MUVs of the world, that's when we have to start asking more specific questions about that vehicle. We'll start, say for luxury cars, we'll ask them specifics about, okay, where do you find the gear shift on a Mercedes? Or on a BMW, when you start the car, how do you start the car and how do you put it in first? So we ask these questions, soft questions, and if they get them right, they obviously have driven them before. We have seen, this is interesting, when we first started DriveU, less than 20% of cars were automatic. Most cars were manual. And now what we looked at, last month was about 50% of the vehicles driven are automatic. This is a challenge that we're facing because when you're going to a driving school in India, it's all manual. So the drivers all learn on manual, and generally, if they were a cab driver, it's going to be manual. And this is something that we're solving for right now as we see this increase in automatic vehicles, and we'll put together training programs, a live on-road training programs to solve for this.
Wonderful. So let's get a bunch of questions that we have on this one. So let's start with, this Guru's questions have answered. Okay, we are looking at people who are taking vehicles for say outstation trips or overnight trips. So I would possibly drive my car in the morning to Chennai, finish my work, and I want to take the night drive back home. So I want to sleep in the night and I want a driver to drive me on a night ride to, say, Chennai to Bangalore, or, say, Davangere to Bangalore. Do you have specialized products around these outstation? Or is
yes, we do.
Similar to regular?
We do have specialized products for this. This is a big request from our users in the early days is, can you provide me with one-way outstation drops? I want to go to, say, Chennai, and I'm going to stay there maybe one day, but it could get extended, so I don't want to keep the driver around. So we do specialize in that, and we've created packages which fairly compensates the driver for his time and return journey as well.
And what about, we talked about minors. Do we have any specialized products for senior citizens, hospital rides, and those kinds of issues?
Not at this point, but what we do have for senior citizens is that typically there's a reoccurring appointment. So we allow them to create a booking that reoccurs for them. We don't have that exact product out there.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry that I'm reading out questions without necessarily attributing them. These are all questions from the audience, which is on the chat. So what is your standard process for managing complaints about rudeness or complaints about driver behavior? What's your process? What's your standard operating process? If a rider complains to you after the ride saying that your driver was rude, what's your process?
So generally, we'll take the customer's feedback on a chat system. If we're not able to resolve the issue there, then we'll escalate that where we'll give a customer a call. If that doesn't happen, typically customers will reach out to us, one of the founders, one of the senior management, and then we'll try to resolve it between us. Now that's not scalable for sure, but it really depends on what the issue is.
Let's guess a use case. Your driver was rude.
Yeah. So we'll in that case we'll try to compensate the customer. Maybe give an instant discount on that trip, or give another discount to him, or refund the entire thing if it was a bad case. Then on the driver's side, we'll understand what really happened. We want to hear both sides of the story, especially if it's a larger case. And we'll either penalize the driver and say you have to come in for another day of retraining if you want to stay on the platform. If this is a consistent behavior with him, then we'll remove him completely from the system.
Mm-hmm. And how do you let go of drivers saying that, what, thank you very much, you've been a good driver, but of late we have not been hearing good feedback about you. Thank you very much. How do you let go of your drivers?
We'll directly ban them from the system, and we'll do a full and final what's in their driver's wallet. There's no really questions about it. the driver understands. If he wants proof, all of our calls are recorded, and we can see that there. So we'll also share the recording with him over a call, not like directly to him, but so he can understand what is the feedback, why he's being let go.
Mm-hmm. And there's another very interesting questions about YOLO or bounce to suggest that the drivers, to use the return trips back from the consumers, drop-off points. Are you looking at such kind of partnerships?
Yeah, we up until maybe after the second wave, Bounce was really focused on this on-demand bike rental market. Now they're focused on the Bounce Infinity, the EV vehicles. So we had an API integration with them that would allow our drivers to book directly on the DriveU partner app and go to the nearest one. And he doesn't pay anything right there. So we had a business account with them. It was a full-on end-to-end API integration. Where then once the trip is completed, we also had a small corporate discount with them. We remove debit that from the driver's wallet that we hold with him. So that was a good partnership we had, as well as Rapido. Rapido is doing well now. So our drivers will generally go to Rapido directly, although we did have a corporate tie-up with them, an API integration with them prior to the pandemic. So they all use us.
Wonderful. Okay. The next big question is about quality. In a product, quality is easily definable, measurable, and you could create markers for quality. When you're looking at service, and this is a super personalized service and customizable to every single need, every rider's requirement is different, every driver's motivation is different. How do we ensure, what are your quality questions, especially when you're trying to scale up?
Quality questions is in terms of drivers themselves, but our KPIs or our KPIs.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're looking at quality, the biggest detractors for us, you can go to the Google Play Store, is that last minute cancellations and delays. Those are the top two demotivators for customers to come back and use us again. And those are our main focus areas. So we have to really look at, okay, where do we increase our supply at, and when do we decide to let the customer know that the booking will be canceled without further disappointing them. This is why we are actually, if a person, we are shifting more towards the on-demand model because our drivers also prefer the on-demand model because they're not blocked for an hour or 2 hours prior to the booking time. So we noticed that customers are less irritated with us if they do a pick now booking and they get rejected. But if a customer is booked 3 or 4 hours in advance, he expects that driver to come and not be delayed. So as in terms of quality goes, I think that the types of drivers and the training that we do is fairly reasonable, but can be improved. But the biggest two things that needs to be focused on while scaling up would be ensuring the quality of service itself and dependability, essentially. DriveU, I see somebody messaged about substitutes. To be a threat of substitutes is very high. It's not really in our case. I'll tell you what, because DriveU has ended up being one of the sole providers of driver services in Bangalore, Mumbai, Hyderabad that uses technology and has a scalability and has shown dependability over the years. So right now, I think that's something that's a double-edged sword for us, where people have become dependent on DriveU, and if we're not able to live up to their expectations, then we're going to face issues scaling.
So one of the things that India, at least a lot of this tech in transportation has solved, is the real-time location. So supposing there's a driver I booked at say about 11 o'clock in the morning for a say 11:45 or 12 o'clock departure, I actually till the driver shows up, I don't know where the driver is.
Yeah. So that's something that from day one we've always tried to fix. Right now it's becoming even more difficult with tracking of applications in the background. So drivers have a tendency also to try to extend their battery life by turning on airplane mode on their phone, which will, completely distracts us from even tracking the driver itself. So this is an issue. Our drivers are not connected to a vehicle all the time, so we don't have a GPS, or they can't plug their phone in all throughout the entire thing.
So if we are able to promise the rider that I will give you real-time location of the driver, a lot of these problems about pre-ride moments of truth, driver arriving late, driver not knowing where to arrive, driver looking around for his two-wheelers parking space, all of that will be taken care of. If you can get that real time.
We're actually piloting that right now. We actually have an option for our drivers to enter the ETA that they are going to actually come. So that's what you'll see in a lot of these cities now. So our driver will punch in, okay, I'll be there at this time. But the problem comes to is the map view. As soon as a customer opens the map and it shows that he's still 10 kilometers away from me, I'm going to be like, is this guy really coming? And then until you call him and he says, no, sir, I'm around the corner. So this is something that is an issue. We don't have that technology what Uber has, and Uber has that kind of maps it. So this is their own in-house. It's not actually the driver, movement that they're tracking, but it kind of simulates, it's automated or simulated for it. So we're well aware, yeah.
Okay. How about scaling this up? As I was asking, okay, this is a wonderful question. How do we take this to B2B? Supposing there's like for instance, our own program, we have a lot of women students, we have classes till 8:30 in the evening, and we as an institution wants to make sure that as women students reach home on time. So would it be okay for an IMB to sign up for say 20 cars, 20 drivers to drop our women students back home?
Yeah, we actually have
opportunity.
A lot of people don't know we have a very strong B2B presence as well.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, we have 55% B2C bookings and 45% B2B.
Okay.
And we're doing about 1 lakh trips per month. Our B2B clients include, corporates like you. Okay, say, people will want to have a party and they need 100 drivers outside the Taj. So we give them a dashboard, then create them. In those one-off cases, we'll give them also a resource at the location.
Mm-hmm.
But our B2B business actually is very technologically enabled. We work with Ola. We move their Ola electric vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, we used to do the pick and drops for servicing for the Ola fleet. We work with Cars24 across 3 or 4 different legs of the journey, from the time the vehicle is purchased to the service station to get refurbished, then to the show, to the studio to get pictures taken, then back to the hub to store. We work with many of these guys like Car Deco, OLX, Ola Cars as well, on all these used car sales and throughout their processes. In some of these cases, we actually do facilitate the test drives as well. So if you as a customer wants to test drive from one of the from Cars24, our driver will go to the hub, pick up that car, bring it for a test drive, and bring it back to the hub. So that's one big use case. Another large use case of ours for B2B are service stations. Mm-hmm. Service stations, they offer free pick and drops to customers, and outside of Bangalore, we're probably the ones doing it for you. We do, that's our second largest category actually. Our service stations, say Hyundai. We work with Maruti at our Panani level, but we also work with all, maybe at a service station level, all different brands.
Okay, so it's a two-sided question. On one side is this thing about super app. You're diversifying just from aggregating the drivers and doing variety of other things. But on the other side, there's somebody else who's also called this as drift. Your app is drifting away from core driver services to variety of other services. Is this drift, or is this opportunistic, or is this a well thought out strategy that these are the 20 services I want to be in?
It's a little bit combination of the latter two. It's a shift and a thought out strategy. So it's definitely not a drift. We even, day one, wanting to get around car ownership services. I just saw our first slide deck, and we did mention a few of these in there. Why are we doing this now? Well, it's because of frequency of use. Mm-hmm. So right now, our users use us on average, in a given month at a regular user level around 3 times to 4 times per month. That's great and all. We're driving their second most valuable asset. When you look at car servicing, though, you get your car service once a year. If you look at insurance, it's just once a year. If you look at getting your car detailed, it's once a year. Maybe a car wash is once every 3 or 4 months or after monsoon season. So a lot of these are very low frequency products or services, whereas DriveU has a higher frequency. And earlier I mentioned that we have 90% of our users who have downloaded our app who have used us still have the app on their phone because we could become a utility. Now, how do we tap into this? There are other use cases they're not using DriveU for. Maybe a person uses us only twice a year. So how can I get him to use 4 times a year, 6 times a year, or 8 times per year? How do I build out? How do I expand his margin? Which is why we're getting into these services. Not only that, why we wanted to go into the super app side is we wanted to create a reward-led ecosystem. Mind you, these other services are very low frequency, so you getting a cash back from a service station is not going to really, give you any immediate gratification. Whereas today, you can get your car, serviced by Pit Stop on the DriveU app, and then later on tonight, you go out with your buddies, and you can use those coins or points you earned to get a driver to drop you back home after a few beers. So we wanted to create this reward-led ecosystem built off the foundation of driver services as a low entry point. Our cost of customer acquisition on drivers services, actually CAC plus retention, cost of retention is only 40 rupees. We acquire about 12 to 15,000 users per month on the driver services alone at a very low cost. So we wanted to, expand these other services to tap into, at the end of the day, business, right? If we want to expand our revenues.
So a lot of these services are through contracts and complementary agreements, right? So I'm going to get you back to the fundamental business model. Your drivers are your employees, your drivers are not your employees.
They are contractors, they're not our employees.
And what does the legal just things come around about contractors?
No, that's a good question.
You've lived in the Bay Area, so I know that I can.
Yeah, so there's a lot of news around that. So we're classified as an e-commerce operator. Mm-hmm. Both parties pay us to use our service, even our drivers. So it's not the commission that we take from our drivers. Every month, our drivers pay subscription fee to be on our platform. Mm-hmm. In order for them to take a booking, they have to pay a small, 199 or 299 rupees to be on our platform, as well see bookings that are coming up. Without that, we wouldn't be classified as an e-commerce operator. So we are not an employer of the 7,000, 8,000 drivers we work with every month, and we let them have their freedom as an independent contractor. They can work with us or they
And where are your growth plans? Which geographies do you operate today?
We operate in all the larger metros. I think you could see that Bangalore, Hyderabad, Mumbai, and Chennai, we're pretty prominent in as a service provider. Our SEO is very good down there. You can search drivers and Aviar, and you'll find us listed at top pages. Our core, expansion plans over the next quarter or 2 quarters would be to expand into the northern markets, starting off with Gurgaon. On the driver service side, on the super app side, we're staying down south because we have a larger consumer base down here. Mm-hmm. Whereas up north, we want to first start tapping into that market and then bring in these other services in.
And when are you going to Central India, Northern India? When do I see a DriveU take me from Bhopal to Indore?
That's maybe next year. Years. We're ambitious here. We want to go into at least the top 25 or 30 cities. Mm-hmm. In India, because what we hear a lot of feedback from people. Hey, my mom is somewhere in Jharkhand where we don't service, but they use drivers. We have a lot of people who tell us why don't you guys enter this? Even though it's a tier 2, tier 3-ish city, why don't you guys enter here? There's so much potential. I could use you guys. But right now we're focused on the larger cities because we've hardly tapped into them, honestly.
Okay. So this is a market, this is a product which is easily replicable. There could be somebody else who could just, drive V, drive W, everything, every imitation is possible. How do we differentiate yourselves? What's your moat?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's easy to enter. We have built technology. We have tons of algorithms running in the back. We have a lot of trial and error that has helped us build this technology that cannot be. Almost. It'll take a couple of like a year, 2 years to replicate again to really nail it down. We have a very strong operations sense, which has allowed us to build this out. That's our moat. Our moat is customer, our brand name, our reliability, and that we need to focus on again. Remote is actually just the driver service. You can't come into a market and build a brand name after we've been there for about 6 years. I mean, I'd like to see. I love competition. Every time I see a new entrant, I wish them the best of luck.
Okay. And what do you believe that you have a strong opportunity to connect? To leverage this matching algorithm that you have, the operations algorithm that you have to provide other services, like for instance, outside the transportation business?
Yes, so we recently launched our first company-owned, company-operated service outside of drivers, which is Doorstep Car Wash. We were a little bit skeptical on how it would work out, what would be the adoption rate, but right now we're seeing a 10% crossover of users using that service as well. We've only launched it several weeks ago in Coromandel and HSR. So we do see a lot of opportunities because this technology we built is easily replicable for this manpower service. So when we are onboarding these washers, the same processes exist. We send them the booking. They see the bookings lined up for the day. Then he can select the booking. He's en route. He reaches customer location. He takes pictures of the vehicle. Then he does it reverse when he's closing up. So we do have, and all the parameters such as does this drive? Is he pushing on trip or en route within 5 minutes? Is applied to them as well. So it was more or less adding another booking category for us than building out new technology for it.
And what other legal things? Data protection. What about driver data protection, user data protection?
So I see the question: how do you manage customer data confidentiality, and how to use it internally for promotions? We take privacy very seriously here at DriveU. We never share any data to any third party. We actually are restricted by that, but we believe that your data should be protected. Drivers never get to know your exact location until he has accepted the booking and has to go en route. We never share. Even right now, what we're doing is we're bringing in call masking throughout the entire experience. So even drivers will never have your phone number, and you won't have theirs. With regards to internal promotions, we do respect that you don't want to be bombarded with DriveU material all the time. We'll just become the purple cow. So that's not something that we look to do, and we use it very simply based on your use case. If you use this for getting home safe after drinks, if you use this to run errands, commute to work, or use this for outstations, those are the types of promotions you'll see. And we use I don't know if this answers the question. We use Clever Tap or one of these CRM tools to segment, so nobody really has your information. It's more of a user profile than say this guy's name's Ashish Fatani, and he lives here, and this is his phone number, this is his email address. So we do take it seriously, even internally. Not everybody has access to customer data.
Mm-hmm. So one last question before we were almost close to the end of time, end of our allotted time. BlaBlaCar, at least in Western Europe, has been the site for a lot of romances. A lot of romantic initiatives have happened with BlaBlaCar. So are we also looking at something, given that you have college students and all of that? How do you look at this? Is bordering between privacy and good Bollywood story about a driver falling in love with a rider, or a rider falling in love with a driver. How do we look at this? Is this a absolute no-no, or is this something that you would, because there's an opportunity at one end of a driver stalking the rider. On the other end, there's also a lot of social things. You spend a lot of time in the car, you spend a lot of time together.
Look, if it's a good match, I'm not gonna block them. I would love to hear a story about it. I'll even come to the wedding.
No, but from a data standpoint, from a user standpoint, the corporation has to surely make sure that there are no opportunities for stalking and no opportunities.
Yeah. So it's as soon as that doesn't happen often. But when it does happen, we wait a few days and then remove that driver for an alternative reason. So there's never anything. I mean, it's maybe 2 or 3 times we've had a customer say, "Your driver messaged me good morning." I'm like, okay. Or I think this popular you send like these good morning greetings. I wish you the best for the day. So that will get you blocked immediately and banned from Drive You. So drivers are well aware of that, and we do handle it professionally. And now we're implementing all this call masking and privacy. We don't even show the driver your name. Honestly, they don't know. We still don't show the name to the customer, to the driver. You'll have to tell it to them in person.
Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. Very nice talking to you, Ashok. I think we've learned a lot of things. There's a lot of interesting anecdotes, a lot of interesting questions that we had in the chat as well. And thank you very much. It's wonderful to spend a Sunday afternoon with our students. Thank you very much, Ashok.
Thank you guys for your time. I see a few other questions that never got answered, so ping me on LinkedIn or something. I'll definitely get back.
Yes. So Ashok and Professor, I'll just take 2 minutes to wind up, right? So thank you so much everyone for joining. And I did not introduce Professor Srinivasan initially because I wanted to know you guys to see his talk before you kind of know him. So he's for us at IIM, he's one of the big deals in platform. And Professor Srinivasan hasn't told everyone about his Germany stories. He's actually done food deliveries just to learn the system. So he's not just a professor, but he's avidly into this business. I've shared his book if anyone wants to read it, or at least there's a Kindle edition as well. And for all the other people, Ashok is going to be on campus. I'm not going to leave him easily. We'll also see if he can interact with you guys one-on-one. So Ashok, I'm just inviting you on behalf of the campus, like of our colleagues, right?
Thank you, Ashish. I had a wonderful time today, and I look forward to meeting some of these faces in person.
Thank you.
All right. See you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great Sunday. Bye-bye.
Bye.